Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Gooler Loeb.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 200 of the Work from the Inside Out podcast. My dear friend and colleague, Jenny Lisk, joined me for this special live stream, which we did live on Friday, October 28th, 2022, almost 4 years into the life of this podcast. Jenny has been on this journey with me since the initial launch of the podcast. And in fact, she launched her Widowed Parent podcast the same day as I launched this podcast. So we thought it would be fun to do this 200th episode together. So Jenny and I spent some time during the live portion of this talking about the perseverance and accountability it has taken to remain on track with doing weekly podcasts. And we shared some of the resources and best practices that we've developed over the years to offer valuable and engaging content to our audiences. And also were able to answer some questions from people who were on the live stream with us. We also talked about our books and how we each authored and published during the last 4 years, and discuss the benefits of having an accountability buddy and the ways in which we supported each other during this time. I hope you'll stick around and listen to our conversation, and you'll also hear some names of some of the people who joined us for this special episode. I hope you'll enjoy it. Hello, everybody.
Hey, Tammy.
Jenny, welcome. We're here for another milestone.
Absolutely. An exciting one at that.
It is. So, episode 200.
Woo! 200 is a big deal. Let me just interject here. 200 episodes is a lot.
It is a lot. It really is. And you've been here since I was born. I mean, since the podcast was born. And
4 years ago.
4 years ago, you and I launched our podcasts the same day. It wasn't even intentional.
Isn't that crazy?
It is a little crazy. And yet we're not crazy.
No.
Never.
I don't know. That might be a whole other discussion.
It might be. But anyway, we're here today to maybe take a little bit of a walk down memory lane, do some reflection, talk about what is it like to have 200 podcast episodes, and what does that mean? We've also each published a book in that time too, and I want to touch on that because both things are real achievements, and we've spent a lot of time together, whether you've liked it or not, Jenny.
Every minute.
But you've been such a huge support to me the whole way through. I hope you feel like I've been a support to you as well.
Absolutely.
And we just, we sort of balance each other out. You are this amazing detail project management mind. You're many things. You're very creative. You have a great creative mind. And what am I? What am I? I don't know, but all I know is you help me stay on track. That's for sure. I just saw a nice hello from my buddy, Ed Lawrence. I just want to say thanks for joining us, Ed.
Awesome.
So
I encourage other people who are here. You can comment on Facebook or LinkedIn.
Absolutely. And hey, Dana, thanks for joining us. And Werner just joined us from Warsaw, Poland. So we have an international crowd. I'm so excited.
Shout out to Seattle because Dana's here in Seattle.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Dana's from Seattle. So we have And Ed's here from the Boston area. So we are surrounded by really great people here. My friend David Schreiner Kahn just popped in from New York City, a very old dear friend. This is really fun. So let's get on with it. We'll keep saying hello to people. Feel free to chime in with comments and questions and things like that. But, many moons ago, both Jenny and I joined Dory Lisk's recognized expert community.
Dory Clark.
Did I say Dory Lisk?
Uh-huh.
Oh my God, that's terrible. Dory Clark.
Hey, this is live. This is live. There's no redos.
That's all right. I'm not perfect. How about that?
There
All
you
right.
go.
So Dory Clark's recognized expert community. And we both decided we wanted to start podcasts. It was a big decision, and there were a lot of twists and turns. We had a lot of support, I remember back then, also from our friend Robbie Samuels, who guided us through a lot of the early parts. And somehow, lo and behold, it wasn't intentional. We started our podcasts on the same day.
Like literally the exact same day.
Like almost at the same moment, even though we're in different time zones, right? But, your podcast is called The Future Widow. No, it's not. That's your book. Sorry.
It's all right.
The Widowed Parent Podcast.
Yes.
The Widowed Parent Podcast. Mine is Work from the Inside Out podcast. I got that right. And we've been going pretty strong ever since, both of us. And so what's it been like for you, Jenny, all this time that you've been doing your podcast? We've been comparing notes, talking about different things, maybe sometimes changing things up, sometimes maybe taking a little break. I haven't taken much of a break. I know you've done, little breaks here and there.
See, I wanted to ask you the first question.
All right, go for it.
All right. So, and I'm happy to answer your question at some point or let that unfold. But since we're here to celebrate your 200th episode, and let me just say, I haven't looked at the stats recently, but like some huge percentage of podcasts end up with fewer than 10 episodes. And
really?
Then they die. Yeah. Like the number of podcasts that get started, post a few episodes and die out is a huge percentage of podcasts. So to get to 200 is commitment, dedication. And you're doing this for a reason, right? I mean, not just doing this to hear yourself talk every week.
In fact, you definitely don't want that. And I don't say that to even be self-deprecating, but the whole point of Work from the Inside Out is to really focus in on the fascinating people who I get to interview or really have a nice discussion with about their career journeys and all the different decisions they made along the way, and to also be able to share with people, the fact that it's possible to make changes and move through whatever hesitations, fears, doubts you might have to get to a point where you can find your way towards a more fulfilling, satisfying, and meaningful career path or work life, whatever that means for you. And I think we know, there's tons of data out there that show us how disengaged so many people are at work. So a big part of my motivation is twofold. One is I spent many years as an employee being not all that happy in some of my jobs. I love the work, I think, but sometimes I didn't love the environments I was in. And I finally started working for myself and enjoyed myself a whole lot more once I found coaching as well. And so I really wanted to start helping other people find work that they love. Doesn't have to be your dream job, doesn't even have to be finding your passions, but just something that leaves you at the end of the day saying, that was a good day. I feel satisfied. It means something to me. And so, that's a big part of what I try to bring to the podcast and also to my book was the notion that really just about anybody, if they put their, mindset in the right place, get the right kinds of help, just don't do it alone. You can find your way to something that would be more meaningful, more fulfilling. I'm not suggesting that people go out and, empty their bank accounts or put their lives at risk, but really just find a way towards something that feels more satisfying. I also want to just quickly say hello to a couple of people who've joined us, some of our colleagues from the recognized expert community, Allie Davies, Gina Cox, who just came out with a fabulous book on inclusion. I'm going to give her a little prompt right here, Gina.
Yeah, terrific book. Anybody who's interested in inclusion should pick that up right away.
Absolutely. Let's say one more time, Leading Inclusion by Gina Cox. Fabulous.
And Allie's saying congratulations and she loves your why. So thank you for being here. And let me ask you, Tammy, so why 200 episodes, right? 200. And it was 4 years ago, just to set the context, November 2018.
Yeah.
So next month it'll be 4 years. So why did you decide to start a podcast? Like why a podcast? Why not, I don't know, a blog or a TikTok channel or something else?
Well, I did think about doing a blog because I have done a lot of writing over the years. And it was really between a blog and a podcast. And I started to get to know more people who were doing podcasting, and it was kind of scary, a little exciting. And I thought I could really stretch myself here. And that's pretty much why I went in that direction. I also thought it would be kind of fun to interview people and to talk to people I always have loved talking to people about their careers. So that seemed like a good way to go. I did talk it over with a few trusted people pretty carefully. It wasn't something I went into lightly, like, I think I'll just, do this thing. But it was, sorry, go ahead. I'm
curious because I know a lot of people are interested in starting podcasts.
Yeah.
So what do you think has been the most rewarding and what were some of your maybe hesitations or blockers, maybe why you wouldn't have done it and did those pan out or not?
Mm-hmm. I don't know up front if I had any reasons why not, other than, well, I should say, is
it tech? Is it lining up guests? Is it?
It wasn't any of those. I think it was more a matter of my goal initially, and which remains a goal of mine today, is to reach as many people as I can with, kind of to inspire and to get them to see what's possible for them. And that is still my goal. And so I wanted to know what's the best way to reach people and to get them thinking about what would be a great path for them to get on if they're not happy with the path they're on. Mm-hmm. And that was all I cared about. And so I thought that podcasting was becoming something that more and more people were taking advantage of. And yet it was also something that still would shine a little bit of a brighter light on my coaching practice and my work. So I thought that might be a better way to go at the time. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize it would be a lot more expensive to go that way at the time, but so be it.
Yeah. Okay, so this is good. And actually, we have a great question from Allie who's thinking about starting a podcast. And so, So she's wondering what are our top tips if people are thinking about, starting from scratch? Mm-hmm. Maybe what would be the most important building blocks or tips that you can suggest?
So it's a great question, Allie. First of all, I would say number one top tip is you've got a community of people, Allie, in your corner already. 2 of them are right here. So don't do it alone. I say that to people all the time. So what I mean by that is pick our brains, even though I hate that expression. But what I mean is take advantage of our experience. There's not much you need to do to get started. So I think to get it all set up, it's actually quite simple. I know that if you were to go to Jenny Lisk's website, you'd see some resources right there that would get you started very quickly. So from a technical side, you'd have that nailed down in no time. I think it's more a matter of deciding what is it that you want to get out of a podcast? What's your goal? And I think that actually is more important than all the logistics. The logistics, I think you'd have no trouble with in no time. What do you think, Jenny?
Yeah, I would add to that. I think I think you're right. And I think that thinking through, from the perspective of, okay, if I'm going to host the show, why me? Why now? And why are my listeners going to listen? Yeah. Right. And taking some time to think through that, then I think helps frame the rest of the decisions. Right. Mm-hmm. So, and for me, like I spent a lot of time doing the little stuff that seemed easier, right? Mm-hmm. Like, oh, what kind of microphone should I use? Oh, well, what kind of host? I use Libsyn. Right. But those are the kind of the logistical questions that you can solve, or you can ask some different people and to get some recommendations. But what was stopping me from pulling the trigger was thinking through, like, how what is the purpose, the bigger picture? Right. Who am I serving with this show, and why am I serving them? Right. And then from there, the decisions can flow. Like, well, okay, what does that mean for what kind of guests I should book? What does that mean for how I should frame the discussion? What does that mean for, what other kind of stuff I might want to bring into the show? And I listen to a bunch of different podcasts to get an idea of how they structure their shows. So even if they're done different topics, right, you can get ideas from other topics. So, like, you're going to have a voiceover person in the beginning, you're going to have some music, and then are you going to have an opening segment or not? And are you going to have, the meat of the interview? Get some ideas like that, and you can kind of put together what's going to make sense after you've started with that bigger picture question of who am I serving and why.
I love that. I think that's another great starting place, because there's so many things that you can get mired in some of the you can get mired in some of the the details and the technical side. That's actually not that hard. And for someone like me to say that, believe me,
or you can hire those pieces out too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, you can. Yeah. And I have actually. But I think listening to other podcasts and getting a sense of what you would like your own show to sound like, or feel like, that's actually probably more important. It really is more about the why than the how, I think.
And let me just jump in, Dana. I wonder if you could clarify your question. How did you pick a theme for podcasting? Do you mean a topic, or do you mean? I'm not sure what you mean. So if you can clarify, we'll try to answer that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. And then some other logistical stuff. I know. Well, when Robbie suggested that we both line up a bunch of guests and record several episodes first and have a number of them in the hopper before you publish, right? So you're not like, okay, I recorded one, I posted it. Oh my God, what do I do next week? Right?
Right.
You kind of get a pipeline going.
Right. And David Schreiner-Kahn just offered his perspective, that he agrees focusing on your purpose and the audience first is really important. And if anybody knows, it's David, because he's had 2 podcasts and he's been podcasting probably longer than any of us combined. He's been doing this a really, really long time. He has a show that's still on and has been running a very long time called Smashing the Plateau, which I highly recommend. I listen to it all the time. He has great guests. I've been one of his guests a few times too. Might I add?
And I think has he been on your show as well?
Yes. Not only has David been on my show, since 2014. Thank you. He's been on my show, and his story is featured in my book, as is yours, Jenny.
So that's a good segue.
Yes.
So you have been podcasting for almost 4 years now.
Yeah.
At some point, you decided to write a book. So, yes. And that's a very different exercise.
Yes,
right?
It is.
So why did you decide to add a book into your ecosystem of ways to reach people?
I had a book on my mind, or I'd say I had a book inside of me for a long time, which is kind of funny, work from the inside out, that fits in with that notion. But I did. I had a book inside of me for a long time. And then I finally decided, I think there were a bunch of us all together in New York a few years ago for RexCon, and we were all at dinner, and I just blurted out at dinner one night, I'm going to write a book. And then I thought, well, I guess I have to do it now. But I had it on my mind for a long time. Wasn't sure if I was going to tackle it. But I already knew what I wanted it to look like. And it was just one of those things that just sort of sat in me. And once I decided to do it, it took me a long time to get it done. About 2 years, actually, because I started it in January of 2020, started writing. And it was
published in
January 2022.
All right.
So I could have published it a little sooner, but it seemed like a good thing to get it off in the beginning of the new year last year. So, or almost last year, earlier this year.
This year. It's still your new book this year.
It is my new book this year.
Can I just circle back to Dana's question real quick?
Yes.
There? She was asking about how we decided what we wanted to offer people. And maybe we already talked about this in our why. And yeah, I guess I would think, from my perspective, so my audience is widowed parents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so in thinking about, okay, what do they want to know? Mm-hmm. And how can I reach them with that? Right. So starting with that why, and then backing into, all right, well, there are experts that have information for them. There are other people who are also widowed parents who have reflections or connection or inspiration or something, or just commiseration with them, right? And so thinking about, starting with thinking about my audience of what do they need and want and what will be helpful, right? Then it pretty quickly distilled into the themes that I could bring into the show and the types of guests I could go looking for. And so that's why, I guess that's an example of why I think that starting from that bigger picture, then the rest of it kind of flows from there.
Yeah. And I remember us having conversations about that early on and talking about the variety of guests you can have on and the different perspectives and how that would also help to build an audience of different types. But yet even different types of people could take an interest in each other as well and learn something from each other. Right. And it's very exciting in that way.
Well, and let me say something else, because this is something I struggled with, which I think other people might or might not be struggling with. But, I looked at some other people with podcasts. They were the experts, right? Mm-hmm. They were an expert on X topic, so now they were going to podcast on that topic. Mm-hmm. And if I'm looking at this saying, well, at that point, I'm not the expert yet, right? And so like who's going to listen to my podcast, right? Because I can't, here's all the answers of how you're supposed to be a widowed parent, right? That wasn't what I was going to be able to provide. So then,
right.
So thinking about it the other way around, though, of saying, you don't necessarily have to be the expert to host the show.
Right.
You could stand in the place of your audience on this side of the microphone and bring people on your show who are the experts. Mm-hmm. Right. And then you could be in that role of like being the learner in the discussion, and you're kind of learning on behalf of all those listeners who are behind you. They're not having those conversations. They're just picking up their phone and listening while they're walking the dog.
Right.
Right. and so realizing that, if you're hesitating to start a show because you're like, I don't think I have enough expertise yet. Right.
Yeah.
You don't have to, you only need to be the expert if you're framing the show as I'm the expert and here's something for you. If you're framing it a different way,
right,
you don't have to be the expert. So you don't have to let that stop you if that's a concern someone has.
I actually think that's an excellent point because, and in fact, I think that's a better way to go. I think to be the expert, you find yourself always kind of talking at the audience. And I think, and yet there are lots of podcasts that are hosted by people with a lot of expertise. I mean, I have a tremendous amount of expertise in career matters. And yet I don't assume that I know everything there is to know or know everything about what, why people make certain decisions about their careers and their lives. Right. And so staying open and curious is probably the biggest gift you could give yourself and everyone else, because it really does open up the conversation and it's fun to learn, new things and look at things through a new lens.
Right. And David's adding that you need to be curious and be a good listener. And I think you do a good job of that in your discussions. And I want to bring this back to the book. I'm curious how having a podcast has helped you, if it has, with putting together a book, launching a book, anything. Like, how has having that podcast, you did that first and then you followed it a couple years later with the book. So how have those kind of played together?
Well, I think having the podcast gave me a framework in which to think about some themes and what kinds of stories I wanted to include in the book. I knew right away that the book was going to include stories that would be illustrative of the kinds of themes I wanted to talk to people about. So, for example, one of the themes in the book is it's never too late. It's never too late to try to start something new, because I hear from a lot of people, they'll say, oh, it's too late. I don't want to go back to school. I don't want to start over again. And there are a lot of assumptions people make when they start to think about something that they might want to try that's maybe new to them or just different. And they think, oh, it's like starting all over. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. And I wanted them to have good examples of stories like that. And that's just one of the chapters. But so I was able to pull some great stories out of the podcast to be able to do that. So the podcast really provided the foundation for the stories that could really give, the examples to people. But I already had some of the themes in mind from my coaching practice, and then coupling that with the stories from the podcast. There were a couple of people that I did profile in the book who were not podcast guests, but most of them had been podcast guests.
So you were able then, when you had, this idea for this book, work from the inside out, this framework based on your expertise and experience, to then say, all right, I've interviewed at that point, 100 and some odd people whose stories would be a good fit for for the points I'm trying to make here.
Yeah, and I wanted to get permission from those people whose stories are profiled in the book, even though I guess technically I had their permission because I had already aired their stories on the podcast. I felt like it was important to say, look, I'm writing this book. I'd love to include your story in it. And I already, I also shared a draft of what I wrote in their story for the book and got their feedback on it. So, there were a lot of little moving parts like that, took time to run it by them, get their feedback, a little back and forth, things like that. And there are 22 stories in the book. So, I really wanted to do that very deliberately and make sure that they were okay with that, because, once a book's out there, it's out there in perpetuity, I think. So
I think it's nice that you didn't have to, like when you started to build the framework for your book, you didn't have to say, oh no, where am I going to find people to include? Right? You had already built up a body of work from which you could draw. You had some of those relationships in place. Yeah. Right. And I'm guessing that probably made, like, the book probably would have taken twice as long if you had to go out and start interviewing people from scratch for the book.
Right. Absolutely. It would have. And, it took long enough as it was. So, but and I had the transcripts from those interviews, those podcast interviews. So a lot of the stories that I wrote for the book, I started with those transcripts as kind of the foundation for those stories. And then, in some cases, people's stories had already evolved and changed a little further by the time I wrote the book. So I was able to actually give a little further information about where people had landed and where they had gone to, which was kind of fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So since we've talked a little bit about podcasting and writing books here, I wonder if you have some tips or pieces of advice for anybody who's thinking about doing one or both of those.
I do, as a matter of fact, Jenny. And I before I go to that, well, this is actually paired with that. I just want people to know that, Jenny and I call ourselves podcast twinnies because we started on the same day. But we also spent time over these last 4 years talking on a regular, consistent basis. So there's something about consistency. There's something about having, kind of an accountability partner, an accountability buddy. So when Jenny started writing her book, Future Widow, and was also working on her podcast, we started scheduling regular calls with one another and
Probably
really checking.
weekly, really.
Oh, yeah.
Well, eventually it got to be more than that when your book was getting closer to coming out. But
that was...
But over the period of time, more like weekly calls.
Right. And then after that, it was... I don't know how you dealt with me, but okay. Anyway, that was another story. But really, there's something about having a plan, having consistency in some kind of... when I say an accountability buddy or accountability partner, it's not like someone going, "Did you do this? Did you do that?" There's I needed a little bit of that. Jenny doesn't need nearly as much of that.
No. Let me just interrupt you and say there were times when I would say, "Oh my God, I'm meeting with Tammy tomorrow. I want to be able to say that I did at least something. So let me go do this one thing now so I can report something." Not that you were going to yell at me, but just, I felt like I didn't want to show up and be like, here's my... So
having that touch point though, right? Like knowing that you have that appointment with somebody, it gives you that touch point to know that I had a writing coach too that I worked with for a year on the book. So I knew by a certain time every week, I needed to have certain writing assignments done as well on the book. So I needed that structure. But the ways in which you and I supported one another, really crossed between our podcasts, and then we got into the writing, and then all the ins and outs of putting a book out there, the publishing process, and all the details and the marketing. But we started off just saying, let's just hold each other accountable for the writing piece. And how's that going? And what do you think? Should I write about this? Should I not write about this? So we really created a safe space for us to really talk about like anything we felt like. And yet there was that kind of safe space, but also to be able to take each other very seriously, but also laugh at ourselves. And it was just this, to me, it was like sacred time every week that we did this. Mm-hmm. And it's meant the world to me, I have to say. It really has. And anytime we still talk now, we don't talk quite as frequently, and I miss it. But really, it's just been tremendous. I've learned so much. But I say to people all the time, when you're going to take something like this on, that's a project that's going to take time, think about how you don't do it alone. Don't think you can do it alone. And really try to find some kind of a consistent person you trust to have that back and forth with. They don't have to be doing exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, and along those lines, and actually first let me say welcome Dana Del Val, and she has a friend with the term accountability buddy, which is wonderful.
Oh, I love that.
And Allie, I use Libsyn, and I believe Tammy also does. So,
yes.
And I just made a decision on Libsyn early on, and I haven't looked back, so I don't know what other ones to look at, but it's worked very well. It's robust. It's worked well for me. And on the last point there, like you and I are in very different spaces, right?
Oh, yeah.
I'm in the grief and widow space, and you're in the career space.
Right.
And it's very different. But your point about having that consistency of discussion where we both know what we're each trying to do. We both know why we're each trying to do these things. Mm-hmm. And so, even to the point where like my book was on the verge of coming out and I was completely freaking out. In fact, I wanted to pull the plug on the entire thing. Seriously, like it was this vulnerability.
Was shocking.
Well, and it's a memoir. So, I should have known that memoir is obviously a vulnerable genre, and I did know it, but you don't really know it until it's on the verge of coming out, and then you're like, oh my God. And so the point is having that, long-standing relationship with you by that point where we've been talking every week on things small and large related to our books and other things, that when I call you up and I'm like, I think I want to kill the whole book, and you're able to kind of talk me down off that ledge, right?
Yeah.
That and listening, I binged Brene Brown's book, and between those two things, I went ahead and pushed the book out. So, but the point is, having somebody that is in your corner, who's familiar with what you're trying to do and why, I think has been helpful to both of us.
Yes, absolutely.
As we each go through those up and downs,
Oh, completely. I can't say that enough. I really can't. From those moments of vulnerability to understanding, every little piece of the process. And also I think, we each have different strengths and different areas of knowledge. And I think we were able to offer those to each other. And I say this in the past tense as if we're not doing it anymore, because that's not true. We still are.
Right. But we're reflecting on what has been so far.
Right. And how we've managed to get certain things, out there, which is great. And, it's tremendous. I can't, I guess I've already expressed how great it is, but it's, and I can't thank Dory Clark enough, because there's so many people like you who I've met through the recognized expert community and then beyond. And those connections, and there's a bunch of those folks who are right here in our midst, right at this moment. And those relationships, they're precious. And there's a level of comfort and intelligence and appreciation that goes on amongst those of us who really support one another, have each other's backs. Really, I thank Dory for creating that kind of an atmosphere and encouraging those connections.
Dana's asking how we first met. I guess you were already in Rex when I joined. But I think we met in Robbie's group, which is kind of a smaller subset.
I think that's where we really got to know each other better. We were in a mastermind group that was run by Robbie Samuels at the time. Yeah. So
great. Okay. Yeah. So, okay. Let me ask you, because you're talking about putting out a podcast in the past few years, putting out a book in the past few years. You've been doing a lot of other things. What's coming next for you? I imagine you have lots of good things in store for us.
Well, there's never any grass growing under my feet. That's because I don't water the lawn. Yes. So right now I'm in the process of developing a pilot course that is geared towards experienced professionals who are trying to decide what's next for them. Mostly people who are probably feeling maybe a little stuck and are trying to find their way through the marketplace. And we know that there's a lot of that going on right now. So I'm in the process of developing a pilot that will hopefully turn into a full-fledged hybrid or online course. And I'm hoping to do more of that. My goal is really to reach as many people as I can, as it always has been. And so that's really what I'm working on now, is really trying to keep my head down and working on that. So I've been doing some market research and trying to almost put my beginner's mind on a little bit and really try to open up to see really what is it that people think they need for that. So working on that and hoping to get the pilot out there actually in a few weeks. So nice. If anybody listening knows anybody who's feeling a little stuck and would want to be engaged for a short time in a badass pilot, let me know.
Awesome.
It's going to be great.
That's terrific. Good.
Yeah.
Well, and it's been fun for me to watch you go through this process of starting an online course, putting a pilot together, right? And I think a lot of us, we end up doing things that overlap, or we can get ideas from each other, right? And like you're doing stuff in a totally different space than I am. And yet, I can see something you're doing, you can see something I'm doing, and go, oh, that's a good idea. Maybe I should try that. Or I could take that idea and tweak it this way and try that.
Absolutely. That's what I think. That's a great point. And I know we've mentioned this already, but it's true. I mean, you and I have both, we really do swim in different ponds in so many ways. And yet there's tremendous amounts of overlap between, topics like how do you best reach your audience and how do you best engage people and really try to keep those conversations going and make, really, productive, trusting connections and then things like, being an author and how do you engage with independent bookstores or libraries and things like that. Because since we both wrote nonfiction books, we both have some similarities in terms of trying to reach out to different,
Mhm.
markets. And
Mhm.
I've learned so much from you around that, because you studied all of that for your book before I was ready for that. And
Mm.
you've been an incredible guide, helping me to sort of see my way through to that. It's been phenomenal. So I can't say enough good things about Jenny's ability to help people get their books out there. You've become a quick study, a quick expert on a lot of these things, and really have modeled for me, I think, a way of just being kind of a deep learner, and you
Mm.
don't leave any stones unturned. I can be that way in certain ways, but you've really helped me to see how to really stay even more consistent and on task. And that's been
Mm.
something that I've really needed, and will continue to need, I think. So it's been great.
Awesome. Speaking of books,
Yes.
I believe we are giving away copies of our books.
Yes, we are.
You have
Signed
yours there.
copies. Yes, yes,
Signed copies of our books. I know we're about to run out of time here. So,
yes.
Gina's saying I was her book launch whisperer. Yes, and it was a pleasure working with you, Gina.
Yes, you were.
I love that term.
I do
Signed
too.
copies. So, Tammy, how should people enter the giveaway?
So I think the best way to enter the giveaway would be to reach out to me. You can either reach out. We will know that you've been on here live. Those are the folks who we're going to be giving out a book to. We're going to do a drawing.
One,
So,
yeah, a drawing. Yeah.
yeah, we're doing a drawing, and you will get one of each of our books. So
Yes.
one winner
Signed copy.
will get a signed copy of Future Widow and a signed copy of Work from the Inside Out.
They can send you, if they're watching on Facebook or on LinkedIn, send you a DM by midnight tonight Eastern.
Yes, they can send me a direct message through Facebook, through LinkedIn, or if you have my email, you can send it to me. I need to hear from you by midnight.
And
And
say, I was on the live stream, I went in the drawing.
right, I won in
Great.
the drawing, and we'll be in touch.
Great. And then maybe by tomorrow, you'll be ready to notify one lucky
That's the goal.
winner.
That's
Yeah.
the goal, and we'll
I'm
make it
glad we've had
happen.
so many people joining and asking such great questions. I think it's been really helpful. And I think it's always helpful when people share, right, the
Mhm.
things they've learned, the things they've observed on their journeys. Dana's
It's
saying
been
that it's
fun.
been an interesting, helpful discussion for her too. So great. I'm glad you've been here,
Great.
Dana.
Oh, thank you, Dana. I love it whenever somebody says that I've inspired them in some way. That there's nothing that makes me happier.
And Allie also is appreciating the discussion, especially about how we've worked together. So awesome. This is great.
Thank
Any,
you.
Tammy, final thoughts for everybody?
Yeah, I think that just don't tell yourself something's not possible when it is. It may not come out the way you expect it to. I think that's the thing, is sometimes we talk ourselves into something or out of something, and we think we have to go from A to Z. And I always say, you know what? There's 25 other letters in the middle. Or, wait, 25 or 20? Anyway, there's a lot of other
There's a bunch.
letters in the middle. There's a bunch of other letters in the middle. That's why I had editors. And so, know that, everything requires some consistency and stepping stones. But if you have, a purpose or a goal in mind and something you want to accomplish, it's possible. It just may not turn out exactly the way you thought it would. So be it. But thank you,
Awesome.
everyone, for joining us. This has been a joy and a pleasure. And I have a feeling we might do this again at some point.
We might. I'm happy to do it anytime. And congratulations again on not only publishing your book, but especially today on 200 episodes. That's huge. Are we going to be talking again at 300, 400, 500?
I don't have a crystal ball, but,
we'll see.
From your mouth to somebody's ears, I'll be doing something. I know that.
That's great. And we'll look forward to hearing all about your course and your pilot as those develop. I'm sure you'll be letting us know more about that.
I like
We've
that.
got a couple
do it again. Do it again. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, if all you guys join us and ask great questions, we will definitely do it again.
Yes. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, that was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed this special milestone podcast episode with my dear friend and accountability buddy, Jenny Lisk. It was so much fun to share our experiences as podcast hosts over the past 4 years and the journey we have been on as authors as well. What is your key takeaway from this episode? If you are interested in any of the resources mentioned in today's podcast, you can find them in the show notes on my website at tammygoolerloeb.com/podcast. Just look for episode 200. Are you anticipating your next professional move? Check out my award-winning book, Work from the Inside Out: Break Through 9 Common Obstacles and Design a Career That Fulfills You. It's available in print and ebook editions through my website, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores, and through your local library. If you are inspired by this episode with Jenny and me, please share it with your friends and colleagues, and please do subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying the podcast? Oh, I'd love to read your review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find through my website at tammygoolerloeb.com/podcast. Just click on the Apple Podcast button and follow the instructions provided there. You can also help to sustain the podcast by buying me a cup of coffee at buymeacupofcoffee.com/TammyGL. Since the podcast is self-funded, I always appreciate your support. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. I'd really love to hear from you. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.